Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra McCullough, your host. Welcome back to another episode of TLL Talk. I am super excited to introduce Noelle Johnson, the AZ plant lady, today. She is going to be talking about spring tips for gardening, whatever your skill level or skill set might be in gardening. And she's also going to be talking about designing your garden and really how to start a garden if you've never started or if you're a seasoned gardener, what plants and veggies and fruits to kind of combine together. We can talk about watering, and she's going to share just her best tips on and practices on gardening in general and for all seasons. So it doesn't matter if you live in Arizona or not. She's a horticulturist. She's got 20 years of experience in gardening and in landscaping. And so she's really going to be an amazing person to talk to today and share all of her tips. I grew to love gardening 5 years ago, back in the shutdown in 2020. I actually started. I had never gardened. My parents never gardened. My friends didn't garden. And I just absolutely grew to love it. Now I've got 3 raised planters, and my children are so excited when we can pick some veggies and cucumbers and lettuce and strawberries from the garden, even my little 7-year-old, and bring it in and wash it and eat it. So there is something telling about, when you can grow your own food and your own veggies and bring it from outside, from your outside, your yard into your kitchen and to your table. It's fun. So this is really exciting for me because as a budding gardener myself and new to the journey, I'm sure like others too, it's always great to talk to somebody that has experience that can kind of guide us, and you're just such a wealth of information. So welcome, Noelle.
Thank you, Sandra. I am thrilled to be here. And you're right, gardening it's a journey and it's a fun journey. And yes, during the pandemic and the shutdown and people were stuck at home. Oh my goodness, everybody said, "Okay, what can we do?" while we're here. And if you've ever done it or if you've ever bought from a farmer's market, you know that the produce that you eat tastes so much better than what you buy in the grocery store. And if you've grown it yourself, it just seems to taste even better because you know that you did that.
Right. Yeah, and I think especially with the pesticides too that they put on plants and vegetables now, what you don't know what other people are doing with your plant with the plants that are being sold at the grocery store. Then you got to come home and you got to wash it and rinse it. And I traveled quite a bit through Europe. I have a European family. And I'm telling you, the vegetables just is different here in the States than they do in other parts of the world. So I think when you can grow your own garden and you can have your own vegetables and fruits that you can pick from, and you know exactly what you put it on it for, pests, and you know exactly what you've done to wash it and the soil you've used, and you really feel like you are taking that extra step of responsibility to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing with your plants. And then there's the excitement too of like planting the little seed. Like my 7-year-old gets so excited. And I used to get excited too. I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is growing. Like, look what's
And
happening.
every day there's a difference, you
Yeah.
know? And the produce that is grown in your grocery stores, it's primarily they've bred it or hybridized it to be hardy, to be easy to transport. And so that means that the tomatoes you get at the grocery store have a tougher skin. They're not as tender because if they were, they would be ruined before they got to the grocery store. And in Europe, fruit and vegetables don't travel as far in general. And here they do. So, yes, you could grow it at home. It's so rewarding. And it's not as hard as you think to do so. There's definitely the right way and some things to be aware of when you embark on this journey. But it's magical. It really is, whether it's just you or your kids or your partner. It's so fun. Every day you go out, there's almost something new to discover out there and to get excited about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's just amazing that water and sun, and a little bit of love can grow all these amazing things in your garden that you're just like, wait, yesterday you were this and today look at you. Like I even went out this morning and I've got these amazing, beautiful strawberries that literally a week ago were just still green and weren't ready to be, taken off the vine. And so that's just fun. It's fun for, breakfast time where you're like, oh, I'll just go grab a strawberry. Look how beautiful it looks today. So tell us a little bit about how you started your gardening journey. Like where did your love of gardening come from? And give us a little bit of that background first, and then we can kind of dive in.
It started in California because that's where I grew up, and my dad gave me and my siblings each a little plot in the garden, like a little 4x4 raised bed. And then he handed me a Burpee catalog. And, Burpee's like a big seed company. And I would just look through the pages and I could buy whatever
Oh,
seeds I wanted and could plant whatever I wanted. And it was a combination of vegetables, but mostly flowers. And it was so amazing to see my these plants grow up and know that I had grown them. And then I turned to be a teenager and I didn't have any interest in any of that. And then moved to Arizona when I got married and we bought our first house. And I had big space. I was able to plant things and garden. And that was so exciting to me. Unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't a lot of information out there. And this was before the internet, before you could look up how do you do that? How do you do this? And so I headed to my local library because that's where you would go and started to learn from that. And after that, I was hooked. I just was like, I want to learn more. I want to be able to grow more with my kids. So I went back to school and I got my bachelor's degree in botany with a concentration in horticulture. And I think one of my favorite classes was when we were given a plot in this big, huge field, and we were told to grow all these different kinds of vegetables for school. I
fun.
mean, we got credit
I love
for
it.
growing vegetables that we could harvest and take home. It was
So fun.
awesome.
Well, that's great. I mean, everyone's got their journey and how they've gotten there. And I think as long as you find your way to whatever your passion might be, that's always a great story. So I'm glad you finally and I think as a teenager, you don't really know what you're wanting. I think you have that develop when you're younger and then it kind of shows up maybe later at different times of your life. But that's a great story. I love it.
Thank you.
So, I guess let's get started on what should people do if they are whether they're a seasoned gardener or they're new to gardening, what would be something that you would share as a tip for them to get started with, let's say, a raised bed? What would be some of the veggies and fruits you would recommend and the soil and how would one start that in feeling kind of comfortable and not scared and intimidated with like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do first?"
Yes. So we want to, location's important. Want to make sure we have a location that gets at least 6 hours of sun. Ideally, in an ideal world, you would also have one that gets a little bit of shade in the afternoon because in the summer, that late afternoon sun is pretty intense. Now, the easiest way to begin with gardening and with vegetables is using a raised bed because you don't have to dig up a whole lot of soil. You just set up your raised bed. There's lots of kits available that you can buy online. You can also find them a lot of times in garden centers. You can find an easy kit and begin that way. Your location shouldn't be too close to any walls that are going to get hot afternoon sun. That's particularly important in hot summer regions because they'll literally cook your vegetables in the afternoon and it's really hard to get them any kind of relief. When it comes to what to put in your raised bed, we'll talk about that. Compost is the number one thing. And compost comes in bags. It can be easy. Or if you're doing lots of vegetable beds, you can actually order a truckload and they'll dump it in your front yard. I've had that done too. When it comes to the soil composition for your vegetable garden, what we want to do, you're going to fill it with 50% topsoil. So this could be just really high quality topsoil. You're going to put that in your bed. And then you're going to put in about 30% compost.
And where would one get compost? I mean, can you get compost at like Home Depot or
You
Lowe's or
can. You can
okay.
absolutely get you can get compost at Home Depot or Lowe's. You can get it at, your local nursery. It's easy to find. So then that's going to be 30% of what you put in there. And then the rest, you can absolutely add things like manure. So specifically, steer manure, you can do rabbit manure, chicken manure. You just want, and it's available in bags. So you're gonna make that's gonna make up about the next the rest of it, the 20%. And if you want to add a little magic ingredient, you're going to add worm castings. And
Oh,
worm castings are the poop from earthworms, and
okay.
it looks like brown soil. You can purchase that online. You can purchase it at a local worm farm, and you're going to sprinkle that on top. And then you've got this wonderful soup of soil that's going to help you grow really wonderful vegetables. You're going to mix that all together. And vegetables, they want really good soil. That's that's the magic to having really great, delicious tasting vegetables is we have to get that really great soil mixture together.
As a base. Okay. That's great. That's great information. Now, what about like coffee grounds or like vegetable that you can make your own compost at home? I know, especially in California, I've got friends that are making their own compost and they've got like a compost machine. Is there anything that you could recycle from your meal at home or from things here in the house that you could then put into your garden? Or are you kind of like, don't do that?
There's a lot of garden old wives' tales and practices out there. And in general, making your own compost is great. You can absolutely use what you've composted. That's wonderful for the garden. Uh, Coffee grounds help to acidify the soil, and it is organic, but you're not going to be putting coffee grounds on there all the time because that's not
Right.
good. If you do it
Okay.
once, that's fine, but the science doesn't back up putting coffee grounds down all the time. So, when you're looking for garden tips and how to do things like that, there's a lot of info out there that really isn't science based and necessarily as beneficial as people think it is.
Okay, that's good to know. Because I mean, there is just so much information. I know a girlfriend that puts eggshells in her
Yeah,
planter, and she's
that's
like
one of them. That's one of the
she
big ones
swears
too.
by it, and I'm like, "I am not taking my time to, like,
No,
crush eggshells to put them in my soil," but
no,
she swears by it, so
so no, there's a lot of that out there. But one thing that you can add to your garden that's really beneficial, whether if you've planted seeds, once your seeds start to come up, or you've added transplants, you want to mulch your vegetable garden because all that exposed soil is going to get dry pretty fast, especially in the summer. So we want to add a mulch, and a really good product is straw, just plain straw. And you can buy it in bags, and it's just cut up straw, and you use that to sprinkle over the surface of your vegetable garden, about an inch or two. And it keeps the soil cooler, it keeps it from drying out too fast, and it keeps down weeds. And another benefit is that it breaks down slowly over time and it actually adds nutrients to the soil.
oh, I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. That's a great tip. I think that's a good one. And then, what about, like I get these little white pests sometimes on my cucumbers and my lettuce, and I also find, like, bite marks, and I'm like, what's biting my
Yes.
cucumbers or even my Brussels sprouts, like, how do we avoid getting those guys? I mean, do, like, ladybugs and earthworms or somebody told me mint, if you put it in your garden, like, how do you organically get rid of some of those pests that are inevitable? They're trying to
If you have a vegetable garden, you're going to get insect pests. It's just the way it is. You want to keep your eye out for them. So, with plants that have larger leaves, like broccoli and cauliflower and your leafy greens and lettuces, you're going to notice some little holes in the leaves. And those are usually caused by caterpillars because they like the
Oh,
taste of the vegetables too. And the good news is there's 2 products that we can use. So for the caterpillars and the little holes that you see, you can spray a product on there called BT, and it's an organic pesticide, and you spray it on the leaves, and it will get rid of your caterpillars. And you need to reapply it every 2 weeks or if it rains, but it is perfectly safe to eat. So, that's for caterpillars, things, chewing holes in your plants. The second is we have lots of insects that kind of are more like your sucking insects. So that includes aphids, it includes insects such as scale, whiteflies, things like that. And insecticidal soap is really helpful for that. And that's again an organic product. There's lots of recipes online for how to make your own insecticidal soap. And one of the ingredients is dish detergent, but you don't want to make your own. It's another one of those old practices you don't want to do anymore because our dish soaps nowadays have harsh detergents in them that are not good for your vegetables. You can buy insecticidal soap at the store or you can order it online, and that's the kind you want to use. And you're going to spray it on your vegetables. But where you spray it matters because a lot of insect pests like to congregate underneath the leaves of your vegetables. So you want to be sure you're spraying the top and the bottom. And insecticidal soap is it's very useful, but you can't apply it when temperatures are over 90 degrees because it's going to burn your plants in the summer. So at that point, if you have a lot of insect pests and it is summertime, you could apply it in the evening when temperatures are below 90 and then wash it off in the morning before it gets above 90.
Okay. Smart. Okay, I like that. And then, and so once everything starts to grow, I know I've got some friends that are like, well, what point do you know when to start picking them? Because it looks like they might be ready, or it might be a little bit lighter green on the top and darker green on the bottom, like for a cucumber, for instance. Is there like a time frame from when something buds to when it's actually ready to eat? Or is there something with visually you can just tell and be like, oh, okay, like strawberries, obviously I could tell, and like
Yes,
most of my vegetables I can tell too. But like cucumbers and Brussels sprouts, like sometimes you wonder, like, is it gonna grow bigger? Do I leave it longer or is this it? And then I've left things, yeah, and I've left things a little longer, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, that's it's gone now. Start
absolutely.
over.
So there's a couple of things we need to look at. If you are planting from seed, that there's information on that seed packet, and it will tell you from the time you sow your seed till when it's ready to harvest. So it'll give you a framework of time.
Okay.
So it'll say 90 days after you plant this seed, they should be ready for harvest. So you're probably going to start looking and checking about 2 weeks before that date. When it comes to leafy greens, such as your lettuces, maybe Swiss chard or whatever, if the leaves look green like they should, then it's probably okay to harvest, but you can always just pull off a leaf to test it. If you're growing something like carrots or radishes, just pull out one and see what it looks like. And if it looks like it needs more time in the soil, that's fine. Say, okay, not ready to pull anymore. But one mistake that it's a very easy mistake to make is when we are planting. Maybe we'll typically plant like all our carrots at once and all our radishes at once, or maybe we'll plant like 8 broccoli plants all at once. But the problem is then they all ripen at the exact same time. And there's only so many vegetables you could eat
Right.
at a
Right.
time. So it's really helpful to stagger your planting times. So maybe go about 2 weeks apart. So maybe you'll plant one row of carrots, and then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, maybe you'll plant another row. And that allows you to spread the harvest over a longer period of time. Because with vegetables, it's not all, oh, you got to get all your vegetables in like this week or next week or you're in trouble. No, there's usually a longer period of time where you can plant these things. And so that's going to allow you time to have a gradual harvest. Because, yes, you can have a point where you just have so many and you can't eat them all. Yes, you can give some away to family and friends. And yes, they're going to really appreciate that. But for the typical home gardener, if you're growing most of the produce for your own use, you want to stagger those planting times.
Okay, that's a good idea. And then, like, I plant a lot of things together in my planters. Are there any fruits and vegetables that you would say don't plant them together? This might not be a good idea. Or are there ones that are easier for like a, just beginner gardener that might be able to plant four different types of vegetables or fruits together that they feel like, okay, I can be successful at this and not intimidated?
There's a lot of some reasons that you don't plant certain things together is because they will attract certain types of fungal diseases or bacterial diseases or insect diseases. So, some of the common things that we don't plant right next to each other is you don't want to plant beans or onions near each other, or tomatoes and potatoes, or corn and tomatoes. But the thing is, most people don't pay attention to that, and their
Right.
gardens are fine.
Right.
So,
Right.
I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that whatsoever. What I will tell you, though, is professional farmers rotate their crops. So, what that means is in your home vegetable garden, let's say you're growing tomatoes because that's such a popular plant to grow. And what that means is when you're growing the potatoes and the tomatoes in a certain area, they're using a lot of nutrients and a lot of specific nutrients. And the next year, if you plant a new tomato in that exact same place, that soil may not have had time to replenish the nutrients that it took out.
Okay.
So, with something like tomatoes, which lots of nutrients they need, it's good to move them to a different part of the garden. Grow them in a different part of the garden the following year because then it allows that other area, which you can still plant other types of vegetables in, to replenish those specific nutrients that tomatoes need. So it's really kind of a good idea to move the different crops around each year.
Okay. That's smart. I like that. That's a great tip too. Okay, so then another one would be what about edible flowers. So there a lot of people are talking about edible flowers now and obviously combining them with your other fruits and vegetables. Are they something that you can put in a raised bed together or is it something that you would suggest we need to keep those maybe in a separate area entirely, maybe a different like pot or planter or what do you think?
I love planting flowers around my vegetable gardens because they have similar nutrient and water requirements and they love the same soil. So I will always have flowers in my garden.
Okay.
And so one of my favorite edible flowers to add is nasturtiums. Beautiful flowers, but they're also a wonderful companion plant. And their leaves are edible too. And there's like a peppery flavor, which is nice in salads, but a lot of damaging insects don't like them. So you can plant nasturtiums, other plants that you can do around there. There also are marigolds, and they also help keep the bad bugs away. So those are two that are really fun to use. You could also do pansies or little violas. You can do those in like the cooler times a year, and those are also edible and they're beautiful. And one thing I like to do is if you have like a viola is just like a tiny miniature pansy, and you can take off the little blooms. You could put them in an ice cube, like an ice cube tray, and fill it with water and freeze it. And then you could pop them in like a iced tea or a refreshing drink.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that so much. Anything that can make your drink look a little more beautiful and then, it's something natural too. Are there any plants like this time of year, spring, that you would suggest like this is a great time of year to plant? Like start this one now and it's gonna grow by, like we're in April now, so springtime is getting shorter for us than here in Arizona. But across the country, is there like a spring plant like time frame where people are like, "Oh, we love to plant tomatoes during this time of year," or this is a really good time of year to plant strawberries or whatever it may be that you feel like this is the time of year to do it, to get started.
Well, now that's going to really matter where you live. So we kind of
Right.
divide it between warm, like a mild winter climate, which is what you would get through places that don't experience a whole lot of freezes. And then you have cold winter climates. So I'm going to talk specifically about warm season vegetables, which is something that we would be planting once all threats of freezing temperatures have passed or even frost. So, really popular warm season vegetables for me are you got your tomatoes, peppers. If you like spicy food, there's so many different kinds of peppers, and the plant itself is really beautiful. It's really lush and green, and it's very resilient to the heat. So, no matter how hot it gets later in summer, they can tolerate it quite well. So, peppers are a huge fun one to grow. If you've got kids, I recommend planting some corn, and you can actually grow corn stalks in your garden.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I did that with my 7-year-old last year, and they were literally in my raised bed, and, like, you could see them from the street if you were driving by because the raised bed, they got so tall, and people come over and they're like, "What are you growing back there?" And I was actually so impressed that they had grown as tall as they did, and the corn was delicious, it was sweet, it was amazing, but, I mean, they grew like weeds, like, I had so many of them that grew, it was just crazy.
They're crazy. And another thing I think is so fun to grow in the garden is sunflowers. And there's so many kinds of sunflowers. You can grow the real tall giant ones, but there's lots of shorter, smaller varieties. And sunflowers love the heat. They love summer. They can be planted from seed. They're super easy to grow. But if you grow the tall ones, they can actually help provide shade to your garden in the summertime.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. I know I would love to get a bigger garden. I feel like there's so many like you were saying about the catalog and, like, going through like, every time I'm looking at seeds or I'm at a nursery and I'm like, "Oh, I should plant this or that," I just don't have enough room to plant
That's
everything.
hard. Once you get started, you're gonna want another one. And I wanted to tell people this. It's very easy, especially when you're beginning, to get really disheartened if something doesn't grow right, or maybe you planted it at the wrong time, or something happened and it died. That is the experience of gardening. Even experts I've been doing this for over 3 decades. I still have plants die on me sometimes. And it's a lesson. So if you are new to gardening, the way you become a better gardener is by trying, and you learn from your mistakes and you learn from your successes and you learn what works. So don't be disheartened if, you make a mistake or something. And I want to say that reach out for help, especially that's local to where you live. So you're going to find that there's cooperative extension offices throughout every state, and they're going to have county cooperative extension offices that are going to have regional guidelines, especially in terms of your planting calendar. What
Oh,
should you plant? When should you plant it? Because that's going to differ a lot
right, right.
from the different regions. And so you can find that information. Also, visit your local nursery or garden center. Now, I'm not talking about the ones attached to the big box stores. I'm talking about your local nursery because they're going to really be helpful in helping you know what vegetables are best to plant. And they're going to carry those as well in the seeds. You can ask them, okay, what are best to start from seed here? Which ones are best to start from transplants? When should I be planting them? And they're going to be really helpful. And there's usually a lot of those nurseries will offer free classes in beginning vegetable gardening as well.
Oh, that's a great resource. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. That is really good. And then what about, like, watering? I know that watering is a big one. I know here in Arizona, obviously, we have to water all the time. I've got some that are on a drip system and others I just have to take the hose out and water. But what is your recommendation for how much you water your garden too? Is it something that is just kind of a slow drip and you just have to have a drip system? Or if you don't have the system to put in place, can you just water it once a day? Does it need twice a day? Is there a way to test the soil to be like, "Oh, okay, this is too much water, too little water?" Is there a
Yes,
science to that?
there is. It's so simple too. First of all, your biggest obstacle sometimes in growing vegetables is consistent watering. And a lot of new gardeners will say, "Well, I'm just going to water it." The problem is with by hand, like with the hose or my watering can. The problem is with that, our lives are really busy. And sometimes it's really hard to be consistent. And if you have new little seedlings and you miss a day in the middle of summer, that might be all it takes for them to die, especially if you're in a very hot, dry climate. or it leaves you chained to your garden if you want to go on vacation. So it's really a good idea to have a drip irrigation system in there. Doesn't matter where you live. Drip irrigation is the most efficient way to water your garden. And it slowly drips the water down to the root zone. So it creates deep roots, but it also prevents the foliage, like the leaves of your plants, from getting wet. And in areas that are more humid, if you have constantly wet foliage from overhead hose watering, that can cause a lot of unwelcome fungal diseases. You don't want that. So, an easier way, if you're not committed to doing a whole drip system, what you can do is get a soaker hose. And a soaker hose is a hose made up of black permeable rubber. And you attach it to your garden hose or the hose spigot, and you can weave it around your vegetable garden. And on the hose spigot, which is a little hose faucet on the side of your house, you can get a little battery operated timer. They're very inexpensive, and you just stick a battery in it. And you can program what time you want it to turn the water onto your vegetable garden and when to shut it off. And so that it's probably the cheapest, easiest way at the beginning to start getting your plants watered correctly. Now, as to how often to water and how much, we want to water them to a depth of about 6 inches each time. And so you can use a screwdriver and just kind of make a hole and stick your finger down about 6 inches and make sure it's thoroughly wet after you've watered. Then you know you're getting the right depth. Now, how often you water is going to change. You don't have to water as much in the winter when it's cold, maybe rainy, but in the summer when it is hot, that's when you're going to need to water the most frequently. And so people get really overwhelmed by, well, how the heck do I know how often to water at each of those times? And the solution is so simple, and it involves your finger. So, what you're going to do is you're going to stick your finger down into the soil about 2 inches, and you put it back out, and you're going to rub it between your thumb. If it feels pretty moist still, you don't need water that day. But if it feels kind of mostly dry, then it's time to water.
Okay.
Now,
That's a great tip.
Now, Sandra and I, we both live in the really extreme, hottest, driest place in the country. So in the summer, it's probably watering once. I water mine once a day, and that's sufficient. But if you live in an area in the summer that maybe isn't quite as hot, maybe you can go every 2 days or so. But your finger is always going to lead you in the right direction.
Okay. Super smart tip and easy. Everyone can do that. And is there a time of day? Like I know sometimes they'll say water at night because it can hold over longer, or do you water in the
Morning is always
morning? Morning? Okay. That's good to know.
because at night, you could have a buildup of fungal diseases, and even in dry climates, we can get those on our plants because it just stays wet the whole night. So, watering early in the morning allows the plants to absorb the water before the heat of the day arrives. Because if you water in the middle of the day, all the resources of your plants are devoted to trying to handle the heat. And so they can't absorb water very easily. So it's like before we go on a hike on a warm day, you're going to drink a lot of water before you head out the door,
Yeah.
and you're going to get through it better.
Okay, good. That's great. That's good to know. Like I always water in the morning, but I had friends say, "Oh, I water at night because it holds over more." But I was like, "Ah, there's so many different things that you hear, so it's just great to be able to hear it from you and kind of bring it all together." So, thank you so much. These have been such great tips. To finally kind of end our amazing episode that I could talk to you for hours about, but are there any spring traditions or rituals that you love to do, or like what is something that really makes your heart feel really great about this whole season that you love? Like, what's something you love about spring?
I love that I love color in the garden, and it's when most things are blooming. And I always have flowers in my vegetable garden, and they don't have to be edible flowers. Go when you're planting your vegetables or whatever, go to the nursery and get a little 6 pack of flowers and just put them wherever you want in the garden. And when I look out at my garden, it just brings me so much joy because yes, I have delicious vegetables and produce growing and fruit. But then I also have, my little pops of color here and there. And that makes me so happy.
Oh, I love that. And me too. I Everything is blooming right now in my garden. I have lots of flowers as well. And I even went to Fry's the other day and they had the most beautiful like marigold flower arrangement that was just blooming so beautifully. And it was in a pot and I grabbed it and my son's like, "Do we need another flower?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we can't
Yes.
ever have enough flowers."
Always need more flowers.
Yeah, and they were yellow, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know, just flowers," and there's that beautiful color of all the different flowers that are out there right now, and even Trader Joe's, like, I love Trader Joe's flowers, they have beautiful flowers too, but flowers inside the house, whether you're buying them or whether you're growing them in the yard, yeah, I do think that that just feels so I don't know, it feels like a happy moment when you can bring them home and be like or when you're growing them and clip them and bring them into your house, it just feels so good. So I love that. Well, thank you so much. You've been so inspiring. I love everything that you shared. Definitely these tips are kind of come in handy for me and I will share them with my friends. I'll have them listen to the podcast.
Thank
And
you.
I hope for other people out there too that they've learned something new today. And let us know. So let the viewers know and listeners, where can they find your information? Where can they learn more about you? Where do you have your tips and tricks that they can kind of read outside of the podcast? I'd love for you to share that.
So I have lots of information on my website, which is azplantlady.com. So lots of vegetable growing tips and other things as well. You can
Okay.
also find me on Instagram at az.plant.lady. And my newest book, The Water Smart Garden, I have lots of
Oh.
tips and tricks for vegetable gardening as well.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So we'll have all the links and, website links and photos on our website too that they can kind of go and click on if they need to as well to get more information. So I've been so excited to have you on our show. So excited to have you take the time out of your busy day to come and talk with us. And I will definitely be hitting the website and learning more because I know that today's episode really helped me to kind of define some of the things that I was doing and then some of the things that I still wasn't doing that I need to implement. So thanks again, Noelle. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch shortly for sure. I'd love to be able to learn more about you on your website. And thanks for sharing.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.